This is Twit.
Well, Apple's working on an iOS application that will almost certainly ship with iOS and may be called Healthbook. This passbook-like app will apparently focus on fitness tracking and healthcare monitoring. 9 to 5 Mac's Mark Gurman posted a detailed analysis, the best coverage of this app by far that I've seen online, and he published it this morning. He joins us now to fill us in. Oh, welcome, Mark.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Glad you're here. What is Healthbook, and what will it be able to do?
So Healthbook is an application for the iPhone that Apple has been developing, and I first detailed it in January. It would be a application with several different cards, kind of like on Passbook, but instead of like movie tickets and boarding passes, it's your vital signs and different fitness statistics. So you'll have like a blood work folder to check glucose levels, one to check blood sugar, which is glucose, folder talking about nutrition, sleep tracking. The activity tag, tab in orange is mostly like a pedometer. It tells you steps, calories burned, miles walked. And then there's some more interesting stuff that a lot of companies haven't really tackled in the tech space, such as blood pressure, respiratory rate, oxygen saturation, heart rate, all sorts of stuff. So it's really expansive and advanced.
The thing that jumped out to me when I saw this is, where are they getting this data? I mean, how are they measuring hydration levels? How are they measuring some of this stuff, the glucose levels? Obviously, it's not going to be just the iPhone here.
Right, that's the million-dollar question. So I think there's 4 different possibilities about where data can come from. The first would be the iPhone itself. The M7 could, in the new iPhone 5S and iPad Air could technically work like a pedometer and tell you steps and calories and all that. Other information can come from the whole ecosystem of iPhone connected health accessories. There's Wi-Fi enabled scales on the market. There's Bluetooth blood pressure checkers. There's devices that can measure your glucose levels. But, as you said, hydration, oxygen, respiratory rate, that's some really advanced stuff that hasn't really been done before. So the answer to that question is probably a future Apple wearable device. We know that Apple's working on an iWatch with advanced medical sensors. So it's probably very likely that that watch will be able to fill in the gaps that the existing accessories on the market and the iPhone chips can't do itself.
Now, Harry, you've been following Apple for a long time, and I'm sure you've been following the wearables and also the fact that Apple has been hiring people in the medical area. Does this whole app scream to you of an iWatch that's going to be sensing biometric data?
Well, when Mark reports something about Apple, I take it a lot more seriously than I do when many sites report about Apple. So, it kind of makes sense. We've it seems like for a long time now, we've been sitting around thinking that Apple is probably working on something wearable. But one of the challenges about figuring out wearable stuff is so much of it doesn't quite make sense. It's not clear why Apple would want to put something on your wrist. And we have not seen a smartwatch from another company that really feels like it could be the next iPod. But this health stuff is really important, and it is an area where if Apple chose to, they could do things that nobody has done yet. And there do seem to be some, pieces of the puzzle in place that indicate they might be working on something in this area. It rings true in a way that some of the other possible wearable stuff has not.
It absolutely does, and it's kind of stunning because we started hearing about smartwatches, a few years ago, and everybody expected them to be sort of notifications, the same thing that shows up on your phone, on your closed screen, and so on. And it's kind of veering toward this sort of medical thing. The coolest watch coming out of Samsung, for example, looks to be one of these bracelets rather than a big wristwatch. And we started hearing that Apple was getting very serious about, people always categorized it as a kind of quantified self thing, but this is hardcore medical equipment that they're talking about here, blood sugar level, and this sounds like life-saving applications for diabetics and things like that. It's kind of astonishing to see them go into this kind of hardcore medical stuff because, of course, Apple is in the business of very widespread mainstream type of devices. Harry, what do you think? Is this a surprising sort of left turn into the world of medicine for Apple?
Well, already the iPhone has become a really interesting device for medical stuff, and you've seen lots and lots of startups and sometimes big companies use it as a portal for health stuff, not just doing stuff like blood sugar, but also hearing aids that are tweaked to work well with an iPhone. I mean, it is potentially a huge business in a way that a smartwatch doesn't feel like it's a huge business on its own. I also think it's intriguing that Apple looks like it's building a really robust iPhone application to serve as the interface. Because one question I always have about any kind of wearable is Apple likes to do beautiful screens, and Apple also likes to give you long battery life. That's a huge challenge with a wearable device. And I sort of wonder whether this might be an indication that instead of doing the beautiful interface on the wearable device itself, it's going to let the iPhone be the beautiful screen and the device just be the data collector.
Yeah. So, Mark, I'm intrigued by the fact that this app appears to need third-party support, pretty widespread third-party support from all kinds of hardware and software makers, all kinds of sensor devices and so on. But I'm also intrigued by some of these things which appear to be doable by the iPhone itself without help from third parties. One of them, for example, is the sleep monitor. There are ways to do that. I think there's a real possibility that they're going to figure out a way for the iPhone to listen to you snoring or something like that and figure out what your sleep cycles are. What do you think? Is a lot of this going to be done by the iPhone by itself?
Right. So I think there's a bunch of functionality there, like I said, in terms of the pedometer tracking, like you said, with the sleep, that could be done with the iPhone hardware already in your pocket. But if you look at that application, there is a whole, sort of different health and fitness statistics that are going to be tracked by Healthbook that certainly can't be done by the iPhone. And there's also ones that certainly can't be done by any existing accessories. So there's that hole there where the theory breaks, where you have to have something to step in. Because, if Apple's building the software for something, they're also, looking for the hardware side, because that application does absolutely nothing if it doesn't have the hardware to make it happen, whether that hardware is in an iPhone, on Apple's online store where they're selling a bunch of iPhone connected fitness accessories, or an Apple bracelet or iWatch. That's to be seen. But I think the picture is very clear at this point that they're moving towards the health and fitness direction, and they're going to do it in a way that's really going to destroy the market. And about your point earlier about Apple entering the medical space, right now it kind of seems niche to have a hospital on your wrist. But, there was a time where tablets were very niche as well. There was a time where having a computer in your pocket was unthinkable. There was a time where people were carrying out CD players, and MP3 players were just 15 songs in this huge little box. So just like Apple transformed those industries, I think that the next big insight could be transforming, society and the health industry. So I think it's time for the next big thing, and I think it's pretty clear what that's going to be from Apple.
Well, thank you for coming on Tech News Today, Mark. I appreciate your story, and everybody should go read it because it's very, very detailed and very thorough, and I appreciate that.
Thanks so much.
All right, you can find Mark at 9to5mac.com and also on Twitter at Mark Gurman. His last name is spelled Gurman.